Okay, so I've got David Abraham on the program today. David is a songwriter, guitar player, musician extraordinaire. David Abraham, welcome to the program.
How's it going, Arnav?
It's going well. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hey, no, it's a pleasure and an honor. So what have you been up to? Just in the, I mean, we're all under lockdown here, just to get things rolling. What have you been doing?
Pretty much been at my computer in my room all day, from morning to night, working on new music, trying to be productive, trying to make use of this time. Mm-hmm. So it's been pretty good, actually. I know, as ironic as it sounds, the quarantine has been good for me.
I think for a lot of us creative folks, or those of us that claim to be creative like myself, it's been pretty good. I've been very productive as well. I've got lots of stuff that I have to be working on. I've got an album I'm working on for somebody else. I've got my own stuff that I'm working on. I've got voiceovers coming in.
Wow.
And I decided to start a podcast. So,
it's pretty cool, man.
I think it's that in that way it's been good. The news from the outside can be a little bit jarring, but at least we're trying our best to stay busy.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in letting people know kind of all about you and everything you're involved in. You're involved in the main thing that I guess I know you for is the Koniac Net, which is your baby.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's been a long journey to get to that point and where you guys are at with that. So how about we kind of start off telling people about how you how your journey began, like when did you kind of start composing music, playing music, and yeah.
All right. Well, I started composing back in 2000, just basic stuff before I even knew any theory. I did a little bit of theory in college in New York. And I've been composing ever since then, but I've never really released any music professionally. It's always been demo tapes for like friends and family. And in 2011, I got hit with a really severe case of typhoid, and I was pretty much in house arrest for about 4 months, and figured might as well release some music and see how it works outside that community of just people that I know. So that's how I started. That's how I met Jason D'Souza. And he mixed the album, the first album, and through him I met Karun and Adil and Ishan Krishna, who was the guitarist initially for the band. And the band has been on since. We took a little bit of a hiatus a few years ago, but came back with the third album, which you already know about, which is what you mixed. And the whole journey has been good so far. We got really good response. We got great people listening to our music. A lot of people supporting us. So it's been an amazing journey, actually.
So that first record, that was all you on that. Like you played all the instruments and kind of did all the programming, or what?
Yeah. It was pretty much everything was me except for the drums. The drums was done by Aditya Ashok.
Okay.
And I had Adil guest star as a bass player on one of the songs as well.
Okay. And so this was recorded, where were you geographically when this was recorded?
I was still here in Bandra, but I was in a different house. I was living with my brother at the time. Right. And I had my little studio set up in my bedroom, which was pretty much my house. My bedroom was my house. Mm-hmm. And I had like an old Digi 002, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and just sat down and recorded all the stuff, sent it to Jason, and he did all the mixing. Cool. Actually, I also did do a little bit of recording at Jason's studio. His was also a little hole in the wall, but it worked out really well.
Around what year did you say that was?
2011 was when I started recording it, and it came out in 2012.
And the name of that record is?
One Last Monsoon.
One Last Monsoon. And so from there, you kind of had this thing that you'd made in your bedroom, and then you decided you needed to assemble a band. And who was the first lineup for? And this is the Koniac Net officially,
right? Correct. Yeah.
And so
Jason was obviously the first, and Adil as well. Mm-hmm. And then they're the ones who introduced me to Ishan and Karun.
Cool. And so what was like the next step after that?
Pretty much, I think we've had this. I've had this concept for a double album for many years. I'm talking about since like 2005.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that.
I never released it because I felt it was too personal an album for me to release it just like that. I needed musicians who I really cared about and trusted, and respected to be on the album to do it. And through this journey, I think these three albums, these three releases that we've done so far, have been sort of leading us to this double album, which is what we're working on right now.
So you're just sort of like building up the chemistry to get to the point of making that double record.
It's the chemistry as well as making the audience members, the fans understand what we're about, because our music is it's not just one subgenre of rock. We've grown up with so many different types of genres, and all of us, everybody in the band. Mm-hmm. So we incorporate a lot. We incorporate punk and psychedelic and, indie. I mean, our main genre is indie, but even hard rock. So I wanted people to understand where we're coming from so that they don't get confused. And now most of our fans know that we do this like wide variety of subgenres of rock within the Koniac Net.
Right. And the Koniac Net has, I guess it's one of the interesting things about it is that it has 3 guitar players. And when I was working with you guys, you mentioned that this is kind of like at a concept level, it's sort of how it always had to be and needed to be. And can you kind of talk a little bit more about that? Is it just as simple as you want the layers, or is there something else kind of?
It's the layers. It's definitely the layers, because even when I was recording, in college and stuff, I always ended up having 3 or 4 guitars on one song. Mm-hmm. I love that combination of different melodies to create one type of melody. In my head, that's what it's supposed to sound like. I know to a lot of people it's confusing, but to have so many different guitar melodies. But for me, it's like this whole melody that is formed from different guitars, and I've always loved that. It's just been my thing. Mm-hmm. And so far it's worked out.
Cool. So let's take it back even further, because you said you kind of started off when you were in college in New York. What brought you to New York? Like, what were you studying, and what were some of the influences that kind of influenced you, to be redundant in my verbiage?
To be honest, man, I never really had a music education in high school. We had like one guitar teacher over there, and he didn't really teach much. And I learned guitar through looking at some of my friends play, and I never really understood it though. All I knew was that I loved music like more than anything I'd ever done. It was just in my soul. Mm-hmm. And I was confused when I was applying for colleges, because in India at that time everybody was either going into engineering or trying to be a doctor, or
what year is this? What year are we talking?
99. This was 99. Yeah. So for me it was really I had no idea about what was offered in colleges or what kind of music was offered. I had absolutely no idea. All I knew was that I wanted to do something with music. So when I went to New York, I got into SUNY Purchase, which is in White Plains, and I went there and I honestly had no idea, because I was looking through the curriculum and there were like 200 different things you could do. And I'd never seen any of these names before in my entire life. None of this was even a possibility in my head, Mm-hmm. So it was very, very overwhelming, very confusing. And I remember 2 of the professors I had over there, I'd taken a class with them, and I went up to them. I was like, listen, I don't know what to do. I'm brand new at this. I've never had music training before. What do I do? And they're the ones who kind of guided me into theory and production. And I kind of got off at a late start, but I started in about 2001, studying music. And from there, I kind of started making, very simple poppy tunes, like pop, alternative, pop indie kind of tunes. And it's been evolving since then.
Right on. And so after the release of the first album, we're talking 2011. I mean, that was nearly 10 years ago. The scene's changed a lot since then. And actually, before we even talk about that, I mean, so in between college and you do your music production program. Mm-hmm. When did you return to India? When did you return to Bombay?
I came back in January of 2009.
2009. So you were there for nearly 10 years, or about 10 years?
Yeah, almost 10 years, yeah.
So like there was the college program that you attended. Was there, I mean, did that take 10 years? Were you doing other stuff? What was going on?
No. I after college, I got a job at a place called Chesky Records and Manhattan Production Music.
Oh, nice. See, I didn't know this about you, Dave.
Yeah.
Because I worked at a CD. I worked at a record store also. I mean, we say record store because that's the cool way to say it. But obviously, we were selling CDs. I worked at a CD store, a record store called CD Plus. Back in my hometown. So I did that. See, look, that's the kind of backstory I'm looking for. So tell us more about that, because, well, you know, just before you know, when I was working at CD Plus over those years, I think it was about 2 years I was working there, my music collection and also my taste blew. My taste was already quite diverse before I started working at a record store. And then, you know, when you have the boon of working at a record store, you can explore so much, you know, your taste just kind of blows up. You get access to so much more new sounds, and then your coworkers, you know, if it was anything like my experience, you know, your coworkers are recommending music to each other. It's a lot of fun. I mean, did you have a similar experience?
Well, kind of, because this company dealt with sort of like, you know, only specific, really high quality recordings of jazz and blues, and we had more of a library of you know, sounds and different, like, how would you say, like just basically material for companies to use. So like one of our biggest customers was ESPN, and they would you know, buy music from us for like per year. It was kind of like that, you know.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, but the people I worked with were really amazing. I did learn a lot. We shared a lot of music, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them. They're really good friends of mine. So it was a great experience. I was there for 4.5 years. They helped me a lot. They allowed me to stay in New York, you know, because they sponsored me. And it was very difficult for me to get a job in the engineering scene, which is why I wasted a lot of time trying to get a job as an engineer, or you know, basically a recording engineer. It was very, very difficult, because I must have gone to about 40 studios. I pleaded with them, you know, and everybody would look at my resume and they're like, oh yeah, you know, you start here for you know, 3 months, 6 months, you do an internship program, and then you can start working here. But as soon as they find out that I was Indian, they were like, oh man, we can't hire you because our government is going to come down on us and be like, why are you hiring a non-citizen? Which was a huge issue. I think it still is, you know. Yeah. So the only way I could get a sponsor and to stay in the country, get a green card, was if I had a different job, a very high-paying job, from a high-paying company that could sponsor me, you know. And it got very, very difficult, because I was away from my family since I was 12 years old. I was in boarding school, which was in Kodaikanal. It was an American international school, so I was away from my parents then. And immediately after I graduated, I went to New York, and then I was there for 10 years. So you know, it's not just homesick. I just felt that if I'm going to struggle over there, you know, I was hardly making any money. I was like, if I'm going to struggle there, I might as well come back home and struggle at home and be around my family, my friends who I've not seen in, you know, 20 years. So that's kind of the decision that I made, and I came back, and I don't regret it at all, because it's been a completely different experience over here. And on top of that, I came back at an amazing time, because as you know, the indie scene in India for the past, like, you know, 12 years has been just exploding and exploding and exploding, you know. So it's been good. I have absolutely no regrets.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a good decision, and it also sounds like, you know, you know, just as is the case with a lot of us, you kind of had to go through those things in New York to get to where you are now. And of course, it was the right decision. I mean, a place like New York, and you know, similarly, but maybe to a lesser extent, in Toronto, where I was based and am still based from time to time, it is really saturated, you know. And the amazing thing is, you've had the opportunity to come back here and start something new, you know. And then I mean, the experience that I've had being over here is, sometimes I get the feeling that the way that the rate at which the music scene is kind of expanding and kind of catching on, it must be like what it felt to be like, you know, in the be around in the 60s and 70s in North America. That might sound weird. Obviously, like all the music is contemporary, and all the stuff that people are working on is contemporary with whatever's going on in the rest of the world. But just like there had been such an untapped market over here. And so many people,
I completely agree. I absolutely 100% agree. I've said the same thing during discussions, and I completely agree with you.
So that's very interesting. So I kind of want to just keep going back further in time because so you said you were in boarding school. This is also something I didn't know about you, and we've worked together on an album. So because I'm interested to find out where your influences sort of come into play, where they begin. Like, what do you kind of remember as like a really early influence for you?
When it comes to music, man, I remember the parts of my life are very, very clear. My memory is really bad. I mean, if you ask my band members, I'm sure you have, and you've heard us joking about it, but my memory is awful, like really, really awful. But when it comes to music, I remember things in my life very clearly. And I still remember the day that I fell in love with music. I was 8 years old. And before that, I was listening to, the stuff that your parents listen to, like Elvis Presley and, Beatles and, like a lot of the old stuff. I remember my parents were also listening to Engelbert Humperdinck. Do you remember that?
You gotta have a bit of Engelbert Humperdinck. I mean, my parents are like an extra generation older than most like a lot of people's parents, like my father would be like 80 plus if he was alive today, and my mother just turned 79. So when I was growing up, there's a lot of Kishore Kumar, like old Hindi songs, bhajans, that type of thing. Every now and then Dad would recommend. I remember when I was in junior high school, my father, I had signed up for one of those like record clubs, like Columbia House, I think it was. And so
I remember those.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was the way they got you was like it was like 10 CDs for $1 or something. And I was trying to I think I was in the 7th grade, and I found out about this Columbia House offer from someone else. And so I was trying to fill out like the 10 CDs because I literally didn't know 10 bands or 10 CDs that I wanted. And so I was like, Dad, what should I get, or do you want a CD? And I think he had mentioned he was like, Bob Dylan Unplugged, and then he told me to also get a Barbara Streisand album, and I think so that was my, mostly it was just bhajans and stuff, and my father also used to write his own music, so he would sing his original songs. On a pretty regular. We had a really, really makeshift studio that he had put together in the basement of our home. And when I say makeshift, like very makeshift, like he didn't really know what he was doing. And he is so cool. He had released 2 cassettes. He had come to India. Actually, it was basically on my mom's advice. Like, he had been writing songs for ages. And he was known in the Indian community back in my hometown of St. John's. He was known as like the Kishore Kumar of Newfoundland, and so he would write his own songs, and the mom, kind of prodded him to like come and record. And so, on one of our trips back to India, because we would spend a lot of time in India, like pretty much every year, we'd come back until I was in the 3rd grade. My mom kept coming back every year for long stints. And she sort of convinced him to record an album or however many songs he had. I remember sitting in the studio in Calcutta, I believe it was Calcutta, and being like, "Wow, this is so cool! My dad's recording. He's like a rock star." I was very young at the time, and I remember thinking that.
Yeah.
And then
that's mad cool.
Well, yeah. Well, he was never like satisfied with the songs. Like he had. Put out the cassettes, and nobody heard, like, they didn't do very well commercially, obviously. He just like, it was a consignment thing. He went into the record store and just put a few cassettes in and, whatever. But he had gotten a hold of the instrumentals from whoever had produced it, and he would just spend, in his later years, he would just spend a lot of time in the basement just trying to redo the vocals again and again through a karaoke machine obsessively. And it was, he had just like really basic equipment, like a basic Radio Shack microphone, a karaoke machine, and he had created a booth, which was weird. So he had all that stuff and a booth, which is funny because in our generation, we have all this other gear, but we rarely have a booth. And so he would just sit in that booth by himself with all this random equipment and just, obsessively, just re-record these songs. and I've remastered 2 of them and put them up on my SoundCloud just to kind of
Wow.
memorialize them. I don't have the cassettes of the other songs that he had written. I'm still looking for them. Mom has them somewhere, but I plan to remaster them if I can find them and just get them up.
Man, I definitely need to check these out. After the podcast, I would really love it if you could send me the links.
I'll send you a couple of links.
Yeah, that'd be really nice, man.
So yeah, that was the kind of music I was exposed to by my parents, and then there was the Columbia House thing, and then after junior high started, like I was really into hip hop, but not the kind of it was pretty vanilla hip hop, I guess. Like. Vanilla is the wrong word. It's very much the wrong word because I'm referring to like a group called Arrested Development, and I think like that's not an appropriate word. But I like the word that I'm the meaning that I'm going for when I said that was more like it wasn't exactly like gangster rap. It wasn't exactly like NWA or. It
was more like roots rap.
Yeah, there you go. I can always count on you for these types of. So I was into that. Like this is before puberty, right? I was into that kind of stuff, and then I was into like weird dance music, like 2 Unlimited or whatever. This kind of stuff.
We all were, man.
Yeah,
we all were.
And then it was like finally when I got into junior high, I started like getting more into. To rock music and it was the Columbia House thing is what tipped me into like following music and keeping track of it. And an interesting thing was my parents took away cable TV from me when I was in the 5th grade. And in Newfoundland, if you don't, at the time anyway, if you didn't have cable, then you only had 2 channels. Right. And so like music videos are something that went out of my consciousness when I was growing up. But since we would come to India like every 2 years, we had cable TV here, strangely enough. Right. And so it was like Channel V, MTV India, those things. So like my memories of music videos are from those specific 2-year intervals where I would spend the summer here and I would just only watch either MTV and then later it was Channel V. And I was
what years were those?
Oh, it's again like so the earliest that I can remember in terms of like iconic music videos was like 1990, 1991. So big music videos in and around that summer was like, for example, Jeremy by Pearl Jam, Give It Away by Red Hot Chili Peppers. Those are the two specific ones that I remember from that. Give It Away and Breaking the Girl by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah. And that video, it's not one of their more well-known songs, but that video, especially when I was a kid, I was like, this is such a weird video. Like, what is going on? And then, like, again, like two-year intervals, like, there was some trips in between, but another, say, fast forward, I think 1999, no, not 19, it's not correct. There in 1997 and then again 2001. So I remember music videos from these intervals, like TLC Waterfalls, that was on the go at some point. And then, in 2001, stuff like Usher and, NSYNC and I think before junior high, I had heard about the band Bush, which in Canada is called Bush X, Gavin Rossdale. And so it was like all my knowledge of music videos and music came from these not music, but music videos, like whatever's contemporary, came from these trips to India where I would that's where I had cable TV and I would watch.
That's so funny, man, because it's pretty ironic because India, like till today, if you ask a lot of people about the alternative scene or the hip hop scene in the 90s, nobody really knows about it. There are only like a handful of people who actually grew up with it. But MTV was amazing. Between 1989, I think, to about 99, 2000, we had incredible music over here. Yeah, it was it was the MTV Singapore. That was the feed that was coming through. And
really?
There was everything. I mean, I heard of bands like Toadies and Nada Surf and Super Drag, and I heard the Dog Pound, and I even discovered Cypress Hill, and like all these really known bands, as well as like really incredible bands that not many people know about, like Sonic Youth and Screaming Trees and stuff. Yeah, it was played in India, which was like Screaming my hair right now. Yeah, my hair right now. I'm not even joking. My hair's standing just thinking about this right now.
Yeah.
And it was incredible, the amount of music that was available to us. And then between, I think, 99 and 2001 or 2002, there was a French channel called MCM that came into India for about 3 years. And they also showed some incredible stuff, like really good stuff. I learned about French hip hop from them. I discovered Muse, the very first album through them. It was just they were good like 10 to 12 years in India where there was pure music coming in. Sadly, not many people were like paying attention, I guess.
I was just watching that all day long. I mean, I would come over. We would spend part of our time in Bombay and the other part of our time in Calcutta. In Calcutta, I refused to stay with my mom in our place. At the time, and I would just stay with my aunt in Chetla, and I would just because we didn't have a TV in our Calcutta place, and so I would just chill at my aunt's place, and I would just watch the music channel all day long, and then every now and then I would switch to like Star Movies or one of those other bootleg movie channels.
Yeah,
but like,
same, man.
Yeah,
MTV for me was like my main channel, and at that time also I didn't I used to travel abroad thanks to my dad who worked for Air France, so we used to get free tickets once in a while, and anytime like we could afford to go and visit like family members stuff, we would go out, but otherwise there was no way of getting music CDs or tapes, like really good stuff that you wanted in India. There was only like the basic stuff like Michael Jackson and that kind of stuff that you could get here. But
it was a challenge.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging. I had to beg friends. I had done this so many times. I'd beg friends to get me like 2 CDs, and I would pay them, and it was like a lot of money at the time, but it didn't matter. I just needed that stuff that you couldn't get. And the best way though that I had this kind of music with me was I had an RCA cable going from a TV to my stereo, and I used to just sit there during my summers when I used to come back home from boarding school, and I used to just press record, and it used to be like tapes and tapes and tapes of stuff, and I used to go back to school and then just play them,
Yeah, that's how you know we're from the same generation. I mean, it's funny, like on the other side of the world, I was doing the same thing. I would turn on the top 10 at 10. Or like Rick D's weekly top 40, and I would tape stuff off from the radio, it's interesting. Like I haven't thought about this actually until we just had this. We're having this conversation right now.
Right,
but
right.
like, I mean, I come from a pretty small place in Canada, relatively speaking. Well, no, it is as far as cities go, it's quite small. You wouldn't consider it a city by Indian standards, even though it's the capital city of my home province.
Right.
And we had CD stores there, but it was like limited, and certainly like you couldn't find like rarities as easily as you would in a city like Toronto. And so every time I would come to India, there were certain rare types of things that I would try to look for. I would like holler at my cousins and be like, is there a place where I can get CDs and stuff? And they would take me some random weird shop and all kinds of weird locations. But another thing I just realized is that the first kind of CD that I purchased, this is before Columbia House. So this is like the summer before I started the 7th grade, because the Columbia House thing started in the 7th grade. I purchased my first CD here in Bombay, and I purchased my first ever CD. Not only was that purchased here in Bombay, it was purchased in this neighborhood, the exact neighborhood that I'm sitting in, because we've always had this home. So like right here in Lokhandwala Market, there used to be a CD store, in the market, and I can tell you what that CD is. It was the Crow soundtrack.
Oh my God, I still have that soundtrack. It is amazing.
It is one of the best.
That soundtrack is so good.
Yeah, it's a classic soundtrack. It's got so many gems. And that was a phenomenon where like it was one of those movies where the movie was a cult classic, but the soundtrack also became like the soundtrack became a thing on its own. Like the following 2 Crow movies that they put out, the sequels, they kind of made it a point to have to play up the soundtracks, to be like, these soundtracks are going to be just as groundbreaking. Now, you can't match the first one. And the first one had, like, for example, and in Newfoundland, again, not a really big place, not pre-internet pre-internet, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
And so certainly pre-internet in the sense of like widely like accessible, like everybody had it type thing. And
90s.
Right? Yeah, so all of the, like, a lot of stuff that I would find out about, like cool bands, it would happen as a result of me coming here, and then hearing stuff on MTV or whatever, and then coming back to my friends and be like, oh, there's this really cool band, and then like, you know, 2 months later, 3 months later, they'd blow up, and then it'd be like, oh, you knew about this. And at that time, obviously, I thought that I was some sort of magical oracle because I was able to do that. But obviously, that's not the case. But there was
but it technically it is, because I mean, you had a certain taste and you went out for it and you got it and you heard it, and then, you know, people started understanding how good those bands were. The same thing happened with me and Muse. When I first heard Muse, nobody knew about them. It was like, I remember the first album was Showbiz, and I remember it was incredible. Like, I was like, this band is wow, you know. And then, like, you know, 4 years later, they're like the top band in the world. So
yeah, well, I had that experience. Well, if you look at that Crow soundtrack, there is a Rage Against the Machine song on there.
Oh yes,
and that song kind of like, I had heard that song before. Like, lots of people, at least in my hometown, in my high school, were talking about Rage Against the Machine, you know. And then same with, I mentioned Bush. It's not like I really listen to Bush anymore, but just to finish up on the Crow soundtrack, because it was the first CD I ever bought. First CD, so Helmet, that has got Milk Toast by Helmet. You just said
the magic word, man.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I know how you feel about Helmet.
I love that. I love that band.
I do as well.
Really
they are amazing. They are so just sheer aggression. And just done so well. Helmet is amazing. So there was that. There was a Rollins Band song on there. Yeah. There was a really cool Pantera song, which I only much later learned was a cover.
What was it?
So the song is called The Badge, and it's a cover of a song by a band called Poison Idea, which is a punk band, which explains why. I didn't know it until until well into adulthood. I didn't know that was a cover, and that is it explains why that song is so punky, right? It's like, you know, that the Pantera version is clearly like a metal band with really no punk. Well, I shouldn't say no, but like none. But you definitely would put Pantera like firmly in the metal category with very little punkiness, I guess. Right. But that particular song, which was again the first Pantera song I ever heard, really punky vibe. And man, what a song! And so that's a cover of a song by Poison Idea. Wow. And you know how in that song there's a clip in the beginning and the clip in the end of some guy just shouting. Same thing in the original. The original song has those exact same clips at the beginning and end. Very interesting.
I need to go and check out the original now.
Yeah, Poison Idea.
Yeah.
So cool. That was I enjoyed that. This is the kind of thing I want to talk about with you, Dave. This is is where you're
talking about this, and I have had the exact same experience as you, but exactly the opposite. So over here, I couldn't get anything. Like I said, I couldn't get the stuff that I wanted. And there was this Canadian before the indie scene blew up from Canada. Not much was coming out from there. At least I had not heard much. But in the 90s, I think I remember 97, 98, I heard a band called The Watchmen. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Yeah, so I heard this band and I became obsessed with them. I was like, I need to find this band. I need to find it. And it took me so long. And only in 2000, I had a friend of mine who mailed me the CD from Canada. Where I was in New York at the time, but he mailed it. And that was the first time I had an experience with like a Canadian band. And I still love that band. You know, when you have to really work for something, when you have to, when something is so rare and you can't find it, it becomes even more special. And I'll never forget that band. You know, I'll never stop listening to them.
That's a thing. That's a feeling that is kind of lost in this era where everything is just accessible online. And I mean, it's amazing that things are accessible online. It's amazing at a lot of different levels. But there is that feeling of like digging for something, and especially if you go into I've spoken about this before with many friends, the idea of like bootlegs and rarities and live performances. You know, like you would go through so much effort just to find like a live recording of your favorite band playing your favorite song, and you'd get your hands on it. You'd be like, wow, this is so cool. Or in certain cases, you might be disappointed, and you'd be like, wow, I can't believe they were not able to play that live the way that I liked it. But now it's like, you know, pick any artist and you go, like you almost would expect that there should be multiple live performances on YouTube that you can find. And so that concept of digging, you know, in St. John's we had a record store called Urban Sound Exchange, and so that was the out of the way. Like we had like the mainstream record stores, the Sam the Record Man, Music World in the shopping malls and stuff. But if you went to downtown St. John's, they had Fred's Records and they had Urban Sound Exchange, and Urban Sound Exchange in particular had this like huge catalog of just used CDs. People would come in, and sell their old CDs. And when I didn't take advantage of this when I was a teenager, but when I was in university, I finally realized the beauty of going to Urban Sound Exchange. And I would go in with like, and then for me at the time, obviously it was a lot of money. I would just drop like $100, $120 and get like, get 15, 18 CDs, weird. Sometimes you would just look at the album cover and be like, I've never heard of this, but this album cover has got me sold. Yeah. Like let's go for it. That's another thing, like I discovered so many cool albums just based on the album cover. Like never heard of it. Yep.
I agree.
And just,
I agree.
Just the whole like flipping through CDs or whatever, and I'm sure it applies for records as well, vinyl. And you're like, man, this is cool. I like the artistic sensibility of this album cover is so cool. So I trust, or I have some hope that the music is going to be interesting as well. And
and at that time also it was really hard to make a miss, like to get a really shitty album, because I used to do the exact same thing. I used to go to a record store and I used to pick like I used to save all my money, and I didn't care about clothes. I didn't care if I had to starve. That money had to go for CDs. You know?
Fuck clothes,
and yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I used to go, and I mean, I used to pick up like 20 CDs, and out of the 20, one used to be bad. I discovered so many bands like much earlier in the 90s, like Everclear and Screaming Trees is another band that I just picked up, and based on the cover, or I thought looked really great, and they turned out to be amazing bands.
Yeah. No, it's fun. For me, just off the top of my head, a couple albums that I can think of that I just picked up on the basis of their album cover. The Buena Vista Social Club.
Okay, yeah.
And then Amy Winehouse's first record. This was before anybody knew who she was. And well, this is before anybody in North America knew who she was, because she blew up with her second album. And this was when I worked at CD Plus, actually, so it was a bit later. And I just remember seeing this album cover, and it said that it was a soul R&B album, but the album cover didn't look like a soul, especially for that time, because we're talking 2000s, and the 2000s in my opinion was like a low point for soul R&B music. Like there are obviously good releases from that era, but the 2000s was an era where even like really good R&B artists were kind of putting out like weird garbage. Like you know how they say like everything sucked in the 80s. Like obviously that's not true, but there is this expression that everybody sucked in the 80s, and I guess that's in reference to people that were in the 70s that were awesome, and then So I feel, for me, the 2000s, the naughties, I guess as they call them now. I don't know. I don't know if I like the naughties, but to the 00s, whatever. That was like a low point for R&B, where even like artists that have this like really a tremendous melodic range were putting out very strange kind of songs that did like it's like what the hell is this? And I often say that like now we're living in a golden era of R&B, kind of like all those R&B artists that kind of came up on not the 90s sound, which was influenced by the 70s and stuff, and they came up on that sound, but they have lyrics that are way more profound. It's not just like booty, 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 And on top of that, they, it's like these producers, these hip hop producers, purchased some Radiohead albums and like absorbed the ethereal sonics of those genres. And so you have like productions that are quite ethereal and moving, and you have like really amazing R&B singers that are coming with the lyrics as well. And so
I totally agree. For me, it was I have this exact same experience. I've said the exact same thing. For me, the three golden eras of music. One was obviously from the 60s and 70s, right? The second golden era for me was the 90s, obviously. And the third golden era is the one that we're living in right now. And
we are living in a great time.
And for me, though, end of 99 to about 2003, for me personally, was the worst time in music. Not just for R&B, but for everything. Hip-hop kind of died out.
End of 99 to when?
To 2003.
Okay.
Because, because
that's a short window.
Yeah, it was but it was like it was really difficult for me to get my hands on really good music. There was only a few albums that came out. Okay, let's just say hip hop. There was Talib Kweli and High Tech's album. There was a Gangstar album. There were a few soundtracks, but soundtracks also kind of died out, you know, at that time. The alternative scene kind of died out. 2003, I say, because that was for me when I noticed the independent scene coming up, even though the indie term had not been determined by then.
Yeah.
But there were all these indie bands like Stars and The Stills and the Broken Social Scene and all these guys that suddenly just
dropped three Canadian names, just like boom,
Canada,
boom, boom.
It was Canada, man.
Canada was coming with Canada. It at that time. Yeah, absolutely.
They saved music for me. I feel like they saved music. You know, the indie scene came back, and then 2005, the indie electro scene started. Hip hop started coming back in 2008. Again, this is all my personal view. These are not actual facts, but it's
fully. I agree with you as far as indie goes. Like that was around the time when indie started picking up, and that word indie, like I actually don't like that word at all because it's one of those words that doesn't really describe the style of music in a sensible way.
Yes.
Like it's like it's supposed to mean independent, and so like any artist that's like not affiliated with a label is technically independent. And also like there was a long stretch of time where if you asked certain people, hey, like what kind of music do you listen to, like they would say, oh, you know, like I listen to like, you know, a bit of everything, but like mostly indie rock. Like it was like just a thing you would say to kind of let people know that you have good taste or whatever. And it was and if you look at the variety of bands that fall into that category of indie, it was just like, what does this even mean? And to a certain extent, similar with the word alternative, right? You know, I learned from the manager at CD Plus. This is the education I got at CD Plus. Jody Foss. He was a huge fan of REM, and he basically informed me that like. And again, this is coming from Jody, and I believe him, and I trust him because this is his era. But that REM is kind of like where alternative rock sort of begins. Like not maybe necessarily with them specifically, but with them and some related artists.
Yeah. The late 80s,
Yeah, so
I would agree. I would totally agree. Yeah.
See, like again,
I would totally agree.
If you were to say the word alternative rock to somebody, or just alternative, like it's just hard to know what that even means. And so it's you know, if somebody's going to tell me that it originated with something like REM, then I have to believe you. It was a little bit before my time. I mean, I was alive then, but I wasn't sort of, you know. But another thing I heard, you know, in terms of like indie rock credibility and indie rock snobbery and taste, and again, I could be wrong about this, you know, because I'm not, you know, I'm not as snobby as maybe I should be as a producer, but there is this, you know how in the UK there's this whole thing between like, you know, do you like Blur or do you like Oasis, and like how you answer that question is supposed to say something profound about who you are as a person.
Really, I have.
So in the UK, that's a question. It was like Blur or Oasis, and so with indie rock, apparently it's like REM or the Replacements.
Okay.
You know, and again, like I don't know, like I don't know what that means. I've just heard this, and I don't know what that means. And maybe some of my friends.
I think that would separate. I think it's to separate commercial from real indie, because Replacements were
not indie. Sorry, alternative. I guess.
Alternative, right?
See, this is what I mean. These words, like, what do they mean?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because even like you said, the alternative genre, even in the 90s, it kept on changing. So between 90 and 93, alternative sounded different. 93 to 96, it sounded different, and 96 to 99, it sounded different. You know? So it's just a broad term, and I hate those questions. It's like, you know, asking if you like West Coast or East Coast rap, or so it. Man,
I feel like there was a time. I feel like there was a time. Well, certainly, if you ask me if I like West Coast or East Coast rap, like which one do I like? I think that's a silly question, especially sitting in 2020. But I at least I have a sense that there's like quite a difference in the aesthetic between West Coast and East Coast rap. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like different. The production is completely different.
The production, even the vibe, you know, even well, that's another really interesting topic.
Everything. Yeah.
Well, that's a super interesting topic actually, because it's like, you know, if you can pick so many different artists to compare, but let's pick the two big ones, right? You got Notorious B.I.G. and you got Tupac Shakur, right?
Right.
So both of those artists were kind of existing around the same time. Both are legends. Both were legends before they met their tragic ends or whatever. But if you compare the lyrics and the feeling of the lyrics, like Notorious B.I.G. is just like, listen, like this is my life, this is what I had to go through, fuck this, like I'm a boss and fuck you, and I don't, no apologies, like I did what I had to do and look at me now. You know what it is? Tupac is more just like, he does talk about like a lot of gangster shit. You know,
and he was way more aggressive, way more angry.
Well, when he's talking about gangster shit, he's talking about it, but there's also this like hope, and there's also this is this really what it is? Like, do I need to be doing this? And am I going to be forgiven for this? And like, what does this say? You know, like in Tupac,
a lot of internal stuff.
Yeah, in Tupac, there's all these questions, and there's this like there's these questions, but there's also this hope, and that feeling of hope is also something that I feel exists in even the darkest music that comes from California.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if you what is it about music that comes from California, like across genres, that it has a certain, like, you can almost just tell, like, yeah, well, this band is obviously from California. Like, what is that? You know, like whether you're talking about the Deftones or the Beach Boys, or whether you're talking about Tupac or whatever it is, and I just find I find that really fascinating. But yeah, with hip hop, there is a what I would say is a distinctive sound that I can get between, say, West Coast, East Coast, and then certainly later on the Southern.
South.
So but with indie and alternative, it's way like, you know, what's going on? What do you mean? It really depends on what time, and also like there are bands that would be classified as indie, but they weren't indie. You know, like by the time you get to like Kings of Leon, like later stage, it's like they got big like institutions behind them. Like, how are you calling them indie? Like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like,
so there's that division between indie meaning independent artist, and indie as in the genre. You know, So I guess. Yeah, it's difficult, man, because there's indie hip hop, there's indie electro, there's a lot of indie.
Yeah, when it comes to independent, there's enough of it, right? And then you get weird terminology like indie pop. Like, for example, the Stars, right? Like I always heard them classified as indie pop. You know? And I mean, even the record I'm working on with Mally right now, like it's the best thing we can think of to call it is indie pop. You know, it's indie like a lot of different types of pop music, and we're independent. So, you know, so I guess that's what it is. But like what a kind of a mind fuck it is trying to understand all these different terminologies.
Yeah.
So, okay, how can we pick this up? We were talking about, we got into this bit via the Crow soundtrack.
The past. We were talking about the past.
We were talking about the past. We were talking about the first
Crow soundtrack, and
first kind of that. We need to bring this back to you because it's like you're the interviewee, I guess.
All right.
Right.
This has been so much fun, man, because it's so rare that I get to talk about stuff like this. You know, anytime I bring this up, all the band members will laugh. They're like, "Oh, you're old, you son of a bitch."
Yeah, we're just a bunch of old fuckers talking about back when we used to buy secondhand CDs. Of course, you know, we used to we would put tape songs off the radio. You know, it was in our days. Yeah, I know. Like I get that too, right? Like people just like after you go on about this stuff, people just like, what? You're a dinosaur. Like, get out of here.
Like, I remember what you were talking about. Yeah. I remember. All right. So you asked me where it originated from. And basically, my love for music started when I was 8 years old, when I first heard Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer, and Guns N' Roses.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I kind of looked up and I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's a difference between the pop music and really good music.
Yeah.
So, and that's ever since then I've not changed. I've been in that scene, you know.
No looking back.
No looking back. I need only the best of the best in my life. I agree. You know, I don't have good taste in clothing or movie choices or whatever, you know. But music. Don't say
that. Don't say that. You're sharply dressed. I've seen some of your pictures when you on Instagram, man. You're sharply dressed fellow.
I put on whatever I have. I have old clothes dating back 20 years ago. I don't care about that stuff. It doesn't matter to me. You know, I just put it on. But when it comes to music, I definitely am a snob. I'm confident about what I love because it's molded me into what I am right now down to how much I love music and the way I love music and the way I write my music. So I have a lot of respect for it. I'm a snob because I have way too much respect for the music that's been shaping me for the past 39 years.
Yeah, fair enough. I would say sort of the same thing in the opposite way, which is that I'm sort of like not a snob because I respect it so much. I'm kind of always quite open to whatever I can, whatever I can listen to. And I guess as a producer, I kind of have to like give things a chance before I make a judgment, especially when you're working with other artists and they suggest, because you have to have that discretion, right? Like, okay, like I want this on this type of sound. And it's like, I have to find a balance between being open to hearing out what they're saying, but then there has to also be a point where it's like, okay, no, that's a bad idea. We're not putting that on the record. Like, So, I struggle with that. It's
at the same time, like you said, it's really good because even in the past, like 5 years, working with all the members from the Koniac Net, working with you, it's helped me also open my mind up to a lot of things that I never thought I would like, or I just didn't give a shit about. I never even gave it a chance, and it allows me to actually sit down and listen to it and just form my opinion based on how it makes me feel. And
well, so it gets easier as we're older because when we're older we don't have as much like it doesn't reflect as much in our coolness, right? Like after you get past 30, like nobody's judging your level of coolness based on what bands you're recommending, right? So once that sort of leaves your system and leaves your surroundings and your social circle, then you can kind of just, and also another thing is, after you get a little bit older, you have seen and witnessed several trends cycle and come to the fore and then fade away and come to the fore and fade away. And then you start to notice that, like, of all these trends, there's always some artists in that trend that like were really they had a lot of depth and were really amazing, and there was a lot of other artists that are followers. And in the beginning, like when you're in your teens and early 20s, it's hard to you're just going with whatever cool trend is on the whatever's happening, and so it's hard to tell the difference between the originators and the authentic artists versus the ones that are just following a particular trend. But like I think as you get older, there is a little bit more discernment. They're like, I think this artist is just kind of like going along with whatever the hell is the current status quo or whatever the hip new sound is. You can think about this in all kinds of genres, right? Like if you like pick any genre that was trending, like let's say grunge, right? There was the original artists like from that sound, and then there was all the artists that copied it and then eventually bastardized it and became the horrendous post grunge sound that gets made fun of quite a bit. And then there are some gems that come out of that as well. So that's the fun thing about sticking with it. The harder part as you get older is actually being exposed to new music. I remember reading an article that I think after age 32 most people just stop discovering new music. Now I don't know if that's going to be different in our era of Spotify and
I don't think so, man. You'll only stop if you get fed up of it. I mean, for people like us, we love music way too much.
Yeah, for us it's
so
different.
I've got like 40 gigs of new music every single year, 60 gigs, because there's just so much I'm rediscovering or discovering from the past or discovering like brand new. Just in the past like 2 weeks during quarantine, I've discovered so many bands, so many independent bands, and
any standouts? Anything you want to?
There are few. I've written it down. I've written a whole bunch of them down in some list of mine. But I just discovered, what was this band? They're like a blues kind of band. I've completely forgotten the name, but they're really good. And I don't think I'll ever stop discovering music. It's too much of a passion of mine. It's too much of a love, and I'm always curious to see where things are going, no matter what genre. So it's I don't think I'll ever stop discovering new bands.
That's good. I think you got me beat on the 40 gigs per year. And I mean that's a good segue into, because you started DJing pretty recently, I guess, within the last 2 years.
Trying. And
I mean, I used to DJ a little bit, and I kind of stopped because I got a little lazy myself. I started relying on streaming so much that I just didn't have a library anymore. Like I still have my old library, but in terms of getting new and interesting music to like, you know, share in DJ sets, I reached a point where I was like, man, I don't have like all the new music that I've streamed from whether it's SoundCloud or, you know, at one time I was using Groove Shark or whatever it is,
right?
You know, I don't have any of this. Like, I don't even have the files. Like, what the hell? So I can't even really like DJ anything that I'm like have been listening to. So recently, I've got into the habit of you know, like writing things down or making a note so that I can go back and find and download some of the things that I just discover in my SoundCloud meanderings.
Same. Yeah, I have a whole list. I have a whole list of like I have a separate list on iTunes, like numerous lists of different type of DJ sets and new stuff, old stuff. But the thing is, I don't want to only DJ new stuff. It's not just a fad. Yeah. For me, I want to DJ music just in general, whether it's from the '70s or from like yesterday. It doesn't matter to me. For me, music is music. If you love it, it's not going to get old, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and also, especially here, most of the people are doing a lot of like EDM and house and, you know, electronic and stuff. So there's a lot of space to do more. So for me, it's more about getting people who enjoy music in general and to listen to new and old stuff, you know, whether it's hip hop or electro or indie. It's more fun for me,
yeah.
You know?
You got to go with those old school, the deep cuts and the forgotten gems, as they say on So Election. But yeah, no, I'm fully with you. You're DJ, so you have a separate moniker for your DJing.
For my DJing, for my solo work, for everything that's not related to the Koniac Net.
That's kind of what I wanted to get into, because like at some point, like the Koniac Net, you know, it is kind of your brainchild, but at some point for most of the time that I've known you, I've sort of seen this divergence between like, okay, the Koniac Net is where I put a lot of my ideas versus, okay, no, I want to do something solo. And then finally it was born, like in terms of a new moniker sort of was born. And now I finally feel like you have a separate solo identity from the Koniac Net, and the Koniac Net now feels more like a band, and a team effort. And so, like, you know, is it Damn Dave, or is it?
Yeah, it's Damn Dave. Yeah, correct.
And so, okay, you've been DJing under that name, and do you plan to, like, what's in the works for releasing something under?
So I released a Christmas song.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, and in December, and but the thing is, I kind of wanted to do a different thing. Like, so Damn Dave just doesn't only concentrate on rock or only one genre. It's everything, you know. So I've been writing and producing a lot of hip hop, a lot of electro hip hop, electronic stuff, indie electro. I've got you know, a lot of songs in the works right now. I'm working with Jason and Jeremy D'Souza. I'm working with a couple of people abroad, and you know, there was an old song of mine also from like 2001, which I did an acoustic live session, you know, and I put it up on Instagram last week. So I'm taking that song and just turning it completely around and turning it into more of like a how do you explain, like a very slow down tempo electro kind of song. So there's no the whole focus is to collaborate with people, like different people of different levels, you know, of professionalism. It does not matter. It's more about getting people together and sort of making something you know, unique. And yeah, and like a lot of my hip hop ideas, I can't really incorporate into the Koniac Net, because we are, you know, indie rock, alternative and hard rock band, you know. So I can't really do much of that. And I love playing around. I love overproducing. I love doing stuff like that, which I can't really do in a rock band. Yeah. So this allows me to sort of be more creative. And since I love so many genres, it allows me to be involved in more. And I've been enjoying it, especially during the past like 3 weeks during quarantine. I've been having so much fun, you know, writing music and producing beats, and hopefully I'll release a lot of stuff by the end of the year.
Yeah, man, get it out there. I want to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So okay, there's some more stuff I wanted to ask you about the Koniac Net, and I don't want to. I don't want to skip ahead too much, but I wanted to talk about this first, actually, because you guys had a really cool trip to Finland, like while we were recording the album, like in the middle of recording the most recent album, which was They Finally Heard Us is the name of the album, and also the name of one of the songs on there. Probably, I think it's one of my favorite songs on the record. It's certainly the one that I put the most attention into getting right because it's got a lot of layers and there's a lot of like harmonies and stuff, and so I was like, when we started the project, I was like, this is the song I got to focus on and make sure I get it right. And
just for anybody who's listening, a lot of the amazing harmonies that are on that song are done by Arnob. So
not done by me as in sung, but arranged.
Arranged by you. So and I mean, they sound amazing. Like, these are harmonies that we would have never thought about. So
that's why I'm here. Something else. You know, that's what I'm for. That's how I'm used. So I wanted to talk about, because you guys got to go to Finland and play a festival over there, and you got to play a festival with a band that you've looked up to for some time, I believe. And so I just wanted to kind of hear the story of that, and maybe you could talk about it, how that happened, when you discovered this particular band, and you know, so on. So
sure, I'll tell you exactly. It was '97, and
back in '97.
On, I think it was MTV. I'm pretty sure it was MTV, but there was a song by this band called Penniless.
Penniless,
and, the name of the song is called Avalanche. And I remember playing, and I remember trying to find this band, this album everywhere, and it took me years and years. I mean, I tried in New York, I tried everywhere, and I could not find them. And then I think it must have been 2002 or 3 or something. I finally found one of their CDs in an import section. It was like some $40 for the damn CD, but you know, I bought it, and I've always loved them. It was like Muse's second album. People didn't know about them still, right? At that point, that album also was an import in New York, and that also I think I spent about $33 for that.
We were not spending that much on imports in Canada. That's quite crazy.
Imports were really expensive.
That's shocking.
It was Virgin Records, and you know, that's the only place you could get those CDs. You know, and for me, it was like I needed those albums, and I don't regret it at all, because they are important albums to me.
Yeah, no regrets. I would pay that much for something I really wanted, like especially at that time.
Yeah, and Penniless is like this pure pop alternative band, and I like great riffs. I really till today I love every single one of their albums, and I just started collecting their albums, and you know, they became a part of my life in college, you know. And then you know, when I came back to Bombay, when we released the Koniac Net, and everything was based around Facebook and, you know, MySpace at that time and whatnot, I sent them a message, you know, telling them, hey, listen, man, I'm such a fan, you know, and I love your music, and I released my own music, and I would like you to check it out, you know, if you want to. And I didn't get any response. Then in 2014, we released our EP, Biogenesis, and I sent that to them also, but I didn't get any response. Then all of a sudden in 2017, I get a mail from one of the guys. His name is Pekka, and he messaged me and he goes, hey man, I just heard your stuff. I'm so sorry it's so late, but this stuff is really good, and we want you, we would love it, like, you know, if you could come here and play with us.
That's amazing. I just hold that thought. Yeah. I just, not to cut you off, but I wanted to just kind of draw attention to how amazing that is. If you just can, first of all, it's amazing any situation where like an independent artist like, you know, you're just starting out and you decide to send your music to somebody you admire, as many of us do, and as many of us have thought of doing. It's amazing that they got back to you, but it's also like kind of mind-blowing in regards to when you sent them the music and when they got back to you. Like, that's like, let's just reiterate the first point of contact occurred when?
2012, I think.
2012, and then the next record was
2013. Yeah,
the next record. How do you say it?
2014.
Abiogenesis, abiogenesis. Well, how are we saying this?
Yeah, abiogenesis.
Abiogenesis. What does that mean, by the way? Was there a meaning?
I think it's to do with like a rebirth. So and it's kind of to do with the whole storyline of so basically both the albums have a theme behind it. It's about the end of our world, end of our species. Sorry, not the world, and a new species coming in. You know, evolving. That's much better than than the human species.
Would you say that's the theme on all the records throughout?
No, just the first two albums.
Just
so
the first two albums.
The second album was about the rebirth, about Biogenesis, about falling into a dark pit and then re-emerging as something new, you know, and that's what the whole concept of the album was, or both the albums, you know.
Interesting. That's quite a concept.
I'm a huge sci-fi, fantasy, post-apocalyptic fanatic. So most of my stuff is, as you know, they finally heard us, is like pure sci-fi, pure horror. And so I base a lot of my themes around that, you know, instead of just doing the cliche love and breakups and, oh, you know, he hurt me and she dumped my ass or some shit like that, you know?
Yeah, he hurt me and she dumped me and booty this. But that's really interesting. I actually had a sort of an interesting journey trying to decode your lyrics as we were working on the project. Like, you know, it took us about a year to do it. And for me, whenever I'm working on a project, it takes a while for the lyrics to sink in and really understand what's going on. I mean, I had a similar thing with, well, it's every project, but it's funny. I'll just for a quick tangent, I'm working with Mally right now, and she's got, she just announced it. So I guess I can say it because this is going to come out afterwards anyway. But she heard the name of her next song is "Age of Limbo," and this was not the song we were going to lead with, But, you know, after this lockdown happened, this whole COVID-19 thing happened, which is, you know, the whole world is experiencing this together. And everything seems uncertain. We were like, both of us independently were just like, the lyrics in this song are unreasonably appropriate for the moment. And yeah, but I mean, I've been working on this song for a year as well, and it's like finally sinks in. Like, you know, as the record comes to completion, and now I'm listening to the lyrics more and more as I work on the record. Same thing happened with your record. It's just like, oh man, like that's what he's talking about, or that's what she's saying. And it's always fun to discover that, because it always, I'm quite slow. I'm a slow guy, and so it takes me a good amount of time. So then you know, it's this it's fun process of discovery, because by the time I really understand the lyrics, I've already gotten to know you or whoever it is I'm working with. so then it's like this whole new kind of thing. You're just like, oh man, I already knew this person, but wow, this is such an interesting thing they're saying, and I didn't even know that this is a concern of theirs that they had. And so, but that's a diversion and a tangent. So you sent Abiogenesis. Biogenesis, why can't I say this? You sent that to them in 2014 or 2013?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And they got back to you in 2017 or a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, 17, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just like, wow. And so they got back in touch with you, and what did they say?
Yeah, Pekka had written back and he was like, listen, man, we heard your stuff. It's incredible. And, you know, we weren't expecting this kind of music coming out from India. And, you know, he was just like, why don't, you know, like everybody in the band has heard it, so why don't you guys come down and play? And I mean, I got really excited. Obviously, the first thing was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, you know, and then it kind of sunk in. And I was like, oh man, what if this is just all bullshit? You know, what if this is like some catfish shit? And
there is a bit of that in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Because throughout the whole process, I was really excited. We were trying to get our visas done, you know, trying to sort everything out, organize everything. It was a whole process. And then,
just for people who are not involved in this type of work, there are a lot of malicious actors online that are constantly messaging musicians and artists, trying to, like, you know, and you know, so many of us have these dreams of getting at the very least getting our work heard, and at the most, you know, some people want the fame and the glamour, and so there are so many malicious actors that are willing to take advantage of that sincere desire that artists have of wanting to get heard. Exactly. And so it's a valid concern to have. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. What
no problem. And then while we were doing the visas, my dad, myself, I was at my dad's office. He was just helping me out. And, you know, we did a conference call, a video call with Pekka. And then I realized, oh, wow, this guy's the real guy. You know, I recognize his face. And so that was great, but there was still that doubt, because even on the flight, we landed into Finland, and the plane touched the pavement, and Karun and Adil look at us like, you know, we're sitting on one row, and they're like, dude, what if this is some really fucked up shit? Like, what if like, you know, we get fed to pigs and stuff? And I know this is funny.
Wait, what if you get what?
fed to pigs, you know,
Fed
like, you
to
know, something kill
pigs.
us. Yeah,
Who said that? Karun or Adil?
I think one of them, Karun or Adil.
That
And
shit is
we were-
hilarious.
and then all of us, like, it went from excitement to shit.
We might
like,
be fed to
we
pigs.
we need to be very careful. But I mean, like, you know, like half
yeah,
an
of
hour.
course. You know, if being fed to pigs is like something that could happen, we need to proceed
know.
with caution. Like,
Get
listen,
rid of the bodies, you know.
we could be playing a rock festival, or we could be fed to pigs. We need to be on guard, like, you know. And it's not like they let you carry weapons on the plane or anything, you know.
Yeah. So it was a you know, up and down roller coaster kind of emotional ride. But as soon as we got out of the baggage claim and we were walking on, I see Pekka and somebody else, and I was just like, oh my god, I know these guys. This is the real thing. This is the band. And like that's when it really hit me that I was like, I'm gonna hang out with a band that I really love. And it was incredible, man. They are some of the nicest people in the world. They took care of us every step of the way. They didn't. They just basically mothered us the entire time. They didn't allow us to pay for anything. They cooked for us. They were vegans. They were pure, strict vegans. And
So
they
no
cooked meat
pork
for us.
involved.
Yeah, no meat. Like his
because
his
there's always
is,
the possibility that there's a rock show and it is the band and it's the real guys, and but then after the festival, there's still band. Now we're going to feed you to the pigs.
But yeah, his wife is like a hardcore animal, you know, lover and supporter, and she trains animals, and you know, so like, but they cooked meat for us in their own home, which is a huge thing. I mean, you think about this, then you know, it's absolutely crazy. So. For us, it was, you know, how they say you should never meet your heroes or people you look up to. This was the one instance where I am so happy we met them because we had the best experience ever.
It's a great time, and obviously the show went really well.
Yeah. Helsinki was it was a little you know, on and off because the audience is very much like the Indian audience where people love to sit around, like, you know, at the sides on the bar stools or whatever. They don't like to come to the middle, you know. And so it was, and the thing is, with our band, we feed off the energy of the crowd. So if the crowd is sort of just sitting down and not really in the middle or, you know, bobbing their heads or whatever, it kind of affects us. And that kind of did that to us for the first half of the show, and then after that we're like, you know what, screw it, let's just play. But the festival we had, I think 2 days after, was in this huge barn of theirs, and that was incredible. Like the whole barn literally shook because everybody was jumping up and down to the music, and it was mad. We were like, you know what, let's just get drunk and play our asses off and like enjoy ourselves, and that worked really, really well. That show was amazing, absolutely amazing.
What was the name of the festival?
It was the Harjavalta, because that's the area that they live in, Harjavalta. So it was like it was just called the Harjavalta Festival, music festival. It was like only 3 bands or 4 bands that played. It was a very intimate festival, basically.
Very cool, like such a cool story, and it's not the type of story you hear very often. As far as I'm concerned, you know, it's a bit of a improbable and very cool and very sweet thing that happened. So I wanted people to maybe hear the backstory. About that. Okay, cool. So the other thing, I guess, which we should try to tie up is, you know, you had your first record, One Last Monsoon, Abiogenesis, and then your latest record, They Finally Heard Us. Was there something in between that I missed?
No, nothing.
Cool. So is there anything you want to say about that whole progression of records, or like what's in the works, like for the Koniac Net going forward? What are we doing?
So we are definitely going forward. I'm pleased to announce that we've already started working on that double album, which has been on hold for like the past 15 years of my life.
That's amazing.
And I'm really, really happy that I'm doing it with these guys, you know, with the band members, because I respect them a lot, and they're good friends, and they're brilliant musicians. So I'm confident that this album is going to come out exactly the way I want it to come out, or produced the way I want it to be produced, you know. So I'm looking forward to that. We've already started working on the songs. We're literally working on the first song right now. It's a brand new song, but we're slowly going to get to all the older stuff as well. And
so that's actually kind of what I wanted to ask you, because you this is a double album. It's been in the works for ages in terms of the concept, but you're working on a song that's new, and that's going to potentially be on the record. So what does that mean in terms of like how much of this is like something that you've composed already, and how much of it is something that's being composed together with the group? Like what's the What's
I would say about 80-20.
Yeah.
Or, 75-25, like something like that. Because
in terms of fully new songs versus stuff you already have.
Yeah. So,
but even the older stuff, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe you can clarify. It's like these are old ideas, but the whole band is
they're all done. The songs are pretty much they are all done. Like it's kind of divided. So I have certain songs that I did, but I kind of want to rework them into slightly newer songs with the rest of the band creating putting in their own ideas.
Yeah.
But there are certain songs that I do not want to touch because they are like, for me, my masterpieces. They are perfectly exactly how I want them. But at the same time, I will also ask, everybody to sort of put in their own flavor. And then you have the newer songs, the brand new songs where I've come up with, the basic progression of the song, the basic melody. And now everybody else is putting in their own parts from scratch. So it's kind of balanced, it is balanced.
Okay, cool. So is this, I mean, you are a pretty conceptual guy in terms of these, like, the first two records had this concept running through them. Very Kanye West of you, honestly, if I think about it. So this double record, is there a concept behind that you're willing to share?
I have not thought of the concept as yet. Right now, my main focus is to get these songs to the guys and for us to start learning them. And we have to also figure out how we want to release it because we're not sure if we want to release all the songs at once. It's just too many songs. We don't want people to get bored, So we were thinking of maybe releasing them in segments. So if we do that, then maybe we can come up with a theme for it. But I think it's more about just the creativity process that's about to take place between the band members. I think that's the main focus right now, and just getting these songs, done as a whole.
Cool. Well, that's very exciting. I mean, like the last album did quite well. In terms of it got some good reviews and some accolades. It made a few year-end lists over here in India, so we're all really happy about that. So you got a good a strong leg to stand on. What it is, I'm reaching for an expression here, and I can't. Good foot to jump off of, or it's not. I don't know. Let's pretend like there was a really cool, catchy.
I understood what you were saying. Yeah.
Cool. So this has been a fun conversation, Dave. Is there anything else you want to tell?
This has been so much fun.
I kind of wish we could just continue talking about various genre, labels, and that's actually the fun thing about you, Dave, is when we do get into a conversation. There's just so much in terms of different types of music we could chat about, and so we should do it again. Is there anything? In terms of social media links, what types of links do we want the people out there to be aware of?
Right now, we have Instagram, obviously, which is Instagram / the Koniac Net, Facebook / the Koniac Net. Those two are the main ones. Our stuff is also on YouTube and SoundCloud, so you can check it out there.
The Koniac Net, just so everybody knows, spelled with a K, right? The K-O-N.
Yeah, it's Koniac space net, N-E-T.
Yeah, cool. Anything else you wanna say before we call it?
No, this has been amazing, and if anybody here is listening to this and actually goes on to our media, please say hi, because I love hearing from supporters and fans. I love talking to you guys, so please just say hi. I
can vouch for that. Dave will reach out and say hello. That's a thing that he does. All right, man. I'll talk to you later, and enjoy the rest of the. That sounds weird to say. I don't know if that's appropriate. Enjoy the rest of the lockdown. That seems incorrect. But
that's fine.
Yeah, for the context of this conversation, it's fine. And I'll see you on the other side, brother.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on, man.
Hey, no problem. Take care, buddy.
Take care, brother. Bye.
Bye-bye.